So today I'm with Jonathan Lee, who happens to be my co-director at Zahara. Jonathan's got a long career behind him in finance, which he's going to tell us about, but he's had a list of questions from me already in our inaugural podcast of Diary of a CFO. Whether we'll be allowed to use that name, I don't know. But Jonathan, if you remember the opening question I've got for you, what is your favourite Excel function and when did you last use it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously every FD likes playing with Excel and doing spreadsheets and stuff. And I guess mine would probably have to be a VLOOKUP. I don't expect that to be an uncommon choice, but just the flexibility it gives you. Part of the job is analyzing data, isn't it? And VLOOKUP helps you do that. Incredible function. It's probably a bit basic. I'd love to know more and better ones, but that's mine.
When was the last time you used it then?
Probably a couple of months back in producing a set of accounts for an associated company of ours.
There you go. Excellent. Right. Well, that's the icebreaker. I'm pretty sure that VLOOKUP was replaced by XLOOKUP, but I might just be at the cutting edge of Excel and sort of
you might be
working in 2010, 2007. Right. So your current role in Zahara is pretty varied. I mean, you started working with me purely in a finance role, but you've moved into operations as well. But give us a kind of a story about your current role. I mean, what's keeping you up at night? that's the obvious question.
Well, I think as with many businesses that of our size, we're an SME, on the smaller end of the SME range, and it's cash. We all depend on cash. So normally a day consists of checking what's come into the bank, what's gone out. That's what keeps me awake at night. Fortunately, as a business, we're well funded by our investors. They love us and they're happy to fund the business, but cash is always a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was told many years ago that businesses don't fail because they're not good. They fail because they run out of money. It's as simple as that. And it's very sad as well. And having access to good finance or good people behind you is so important.
Yeah, that's right. I think you can have a profitable business, and there are many examples of profitable businesses that go bust because they can't make the payroll at the end of the month. Now, that's a key thing. We have a simpler business in one sense than some. We don't have a lot of capital expenditure. It's all about payroll and it's about getting in the sales. But we do have one of those challenges, which is, do we go for annual subscriptions? Do we go for monthly? And that is just one of those cash-related decisions which goes to the heart of cash being important to the business. If we have an annual subscription, they pay us up front. If we have a monthly, it's dragged out. They get the benefit of a discount, paying up front. So it's all about balancing different aspects of the business in that way.
And I guess one of the kind of common things with a business like ours, a software as a service, that you end up driving the car as you're building the car. And we have been for a number of years. So, you've got development. And I'd imagine most tech businesses like ours are in that same boat. And, hence why you see, somebody's been in business for 25 years and they're going for funding round E. It's like, my God, are they ever going to make money?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you look at the huge businesses out there that we're all familiar with, the Googles and the Amazons, and the first years of their lives, they never made money. But what they had were backers that understood the journey the company was on. They understood the strategy. They believed in the strategy, and the strategy was the right thing. And it's about that, And I think as a business, Zahara is in a similar place. We're not funded to the extent that we would be in the Silicon Valley, but we are nonetheless on a similar type of journey, and it's about that.
Your role as the finance director, I mean, when did you realise that you were all about the numbers? Give us a potted career history.
I never wanted to be an accountant. Do many people want to be accountants? I've no idea. I have to go and ask a few people. But no, I never wanted to be an accountant. I was at university. I did economics. I ended up working for Ford Motor Company, and I went into treasury because I was quite into that aspect of the business world. And it was while I was at Ford, I guess, that I thought, oh God, I might as well accept I'm an accountant here and just grab the nettle and make it work. But the thing about accountancy is, you can either be one of the doers or you can be one of the checkers. And so I did go down the route of working in industry, because then you're actually doing the job as opposed to working in practice. Practice can be great, but practice, essentially, you're checking somebody else's work until you get to a different level in the business. And I always wanted to do stuff. So I started with Ford Motor Company, worked for a few big companies like Asda Stores, Reed International, etc., before I ended up running a walking business myself in France.
Wow.
And you know what that taught me? That taught me don't believe sales forecasts. because my sales forecasts were brilliant, and predictably they didn't really happen as they were supposed to. And we had a fun 2-3 years doing that. And then I came back and got back into accountancy again.
I was always told that, I forget who said it, but there's two types of forecasts, a lucky one or a wrong one, which probably sums up.
Exactly right. A forecast will never be spot on. You just have to define the level of inaccuracy. But it has to be in the right direction. If it's going in the right direction and you're consistent in the basis, then it's telling you something about the business. But yeah, if it's right, you're just lucky.
I do like what you said about, doers and checkers. And what do you think is the ingredient then of a doer? I mean, we work with many great accountants who are in practice, and their role is, I guess they can be drawn into the forensics and the analytics and things like that. But in terms of a doer, what would you say is the kind of, the essence of a good doer?
I think it's about getting into being interested in what makes the business tick. So, it's all very well and good having a set of numbers, and you can be sure the numbers are right or wrong, but essentially it's about why are the numbers what they are and what do they tell you about the business. And I think, certainly at the outset of a typical accountancy career in practice, you're just about checking that the numbers are right. That's not the case when you get to be a more senior level and a partner level, where your role is to help the business that you are auditing manage itself as well. But essentially, as a management accountant, it's about understanding what the numbers are telling about the business, and that's the interesting thing for me, because on their own, they're just numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of coming from a business background, I'm like the third generation entrepreneur. My dad ran a business. My granddad ran a business. For us, on the kind of entrepreneurial side, it's the cut and thrust of business. I mean, most entrepreneurs will say they love making deals. I guess you must love keeping those deals working, or being the person who enables the deal making. Really, you know what I mean? It's kind of the CFO is sat right there on the top table, making the kind of the organization work better and sort of sanity checking some of the ideas, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think a finance team and therefore a CFO, they are enablers along with the rest of the operations team. They enable the business to work well, and I think if those people think about it in that way, then they'll go a long way. I'm a big rugby fan, and I was, watching Clive Woodward manage England was really an enjoyable high point of my interest in sport. And one of the things he said was that his sole job was to enable the team to be as good as it could be. And I think that is how finance should see itself within a business. It's about enabling, the business to succeed.
Yeah, I guess from our experience, when we're providing, sort of our Zahara software solution to a lot of our customers are finance directors, and we see a big kind of range in styles. And I think what's always quite exciting to us is the new generation coming through who are kind of excited about technology, excited about wanting to do things better, and they're definitely a feeling with those people that they are enablers. There's no doubt about that.
I think that's right. Yeah, and there is inevitably, and it's not it's not shouldn't be wrong to recognize it. There is a distinction between different age groups in terms of how they see things, and there's advantages in having a balance of age groups in the business, because I think there is wisdom in having seen stuff that's gone before and being able to comment on experiences, but there's also advantages in having people who don't have that but nonetheless want to try something new and something different. And one of the worst things that I hear when you're talking to somebody in that way is, well, we've tried it before. Well, okay, when did you try it before? Was it 10 years ago? Was the world a different place then? Let's treat every idea and everything as though it's new within certain parameters. I mean, if you came to me last week and said it, and then you came to me this week and said it, well, okay, we tried it last week, but
Yeah, I mean, if we think about the role of the finance director, and that person is probably going to be working their way up through in the finance team, and they may have got to. I mean, I had a member of my family was a financial controller. I don't think he ever made it to finance director. What's the difference there? I mean, what's that bit that the board's looking for that suddenly makes you get your C-level seat at the table, or you've got your directorship, you're asked to become a director? What do you think is the difference between for that kind of person?
That's a great question, because I think the way I characterize it is a financial controller typically is looking internally and backwards, whereas a finance director is looking externally and forwards, or should be. I think it's about business direction. It's about seeing the bigger picture. It's also about being able to interrelate with other people at C-level, be that members of the board, investors, or bigger strategic partners, customers, etc. And in a way, practice offers a really interesting analogy for that. You when you get to partner level, you're not picked for a partner in an accountancy practice because you're technically the best accountant. You're picked at partner level because you can sell the services of your practice to somebody else, and that is all about interpersonal skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, there's some people who work in finance who are more kind of introverted and kind of more comfortable in the figures than they are talking to people. And I think that's the key difference, isn't it, from what I've seen of a director? If you're going to work at a board level, you've got to know, you've got to be able to communicate. And also, we've witnessed each other. We've seen this, haven't we, with CTOs? You've got to know when to shut up as well.
Yeah. It's all about pitching it right. I mean, in my career, I've had to pitch presentations to investment houses, to the city, and you've got to balance. You've got to be able to balance all sorts of aspects of that just to get the level right. And that's crucial. Otherwise, you'll fall down.
Yeah. So you're a CFO who's got a ton of experience under your belt. You worked as portfolio finance director when I met you, and on board working with Zahara. So you've got a wealth of experience under your belt. What do you think the challenges are going forward? I mean, the question really is around kind of AI, and what are you reading, or what's piquing your interest in terms of AI and the way that that's going to help in the finance role going forward?
To go back further than AI, a lot of finance over the last 20, 30 years has all been about automation and how successful that is. The paperless office famously never happened. But it was all the talk and the rage in the 80s and the 90s, paperless office. And I think we are still really thinking about automation, or should be thinking about automation and making processes simpler. And I think AI can really help us go down that route, because it can, with proper understanding of how it works, it can really simplify some of those processes and make them a lot easier, and that helps a lot. You still have to get past the people, and we know we have them as customers, who still want to print invoices out and file them in a folder. And, I don't think AI is going to help those people,
It's not going to help.
but I think, yeah, but I think, it has a real opportunity to help simplify stuff. I mean, as you know, so we're a software as a service based company. We have a bunch of customers who use our sort of help portal, raise tickets with whenever they have anything that they want to ask about the product, any issues, any questions about how it works, etc., etc. And we use a fairly state of the art software package. I won't mention the name, but that is market leading. But still, getting information out of that software platform on our support tickets is difficult. And I do see that, using tools like AI to query all of our customer support tickets in an intelligent way will add so much information and help us manage and help our customers in a better way. And that's not specifically finance related, but it is, it's an adjacent type of function within the business.
Yeah, we'll come on to that, I guess, which is like you have crossed over into kind of the operations side of the business, and how many other CFOs do that. But let's go back to the working inside finance. I mean, to me, it feels like I saw some stats the other day about the month end routine and the percentage of customers who we always assume that people do their month end process in about 10 days. But actually, there's some who take 30 days to do it. What do you think is holding back those organisations? I mean, obviously scale. The bigger you get, but you talk about automation. Surely you've got to be using automation for if you want to get a board pack done for a board meeting mid-month. You've got to be using all the tools at your disposal, haven't you?
I think a lot of it is around the process, and it's about designing a process to achieve a goal. So, the goal is having you set numbers by the middle of the month, let's say. So you have to have a process, and it can't be a process that can be easily suspended. You can't just say, okay, we won't do that this week. You just have to go and do it. And the business as a whole has to be aligned behind that. So, for example, I mean, one of the more difficult things, and we see it in Zahara every day with all of our customers, is making sure that all of our costs, i.e. invoices, come into the business at the appropriate time, get registered through whatever platform one uses, if it's Zahara, into the accounting system, to give us an idea of cost. Sales are dead easy. It's normally the cost because we are dependent on someone external to the business, often to provide us with that information. So you need a process around it. And once you have that sorted through, then it shouldn't be hard at all to get any sort of timetable. You just sacrifice accuracy in some ways.
Yeah, I mean,
so for example, I mean, as an FD of a listed business, I would have to get out my interim results for the year within 6 weeks. And that would be what the city expected. Now, obviously, within 6 weeks, you cannot have a 100% accurate view of an entire year of a business turning over £40 million. But you can get so close that it doesn't make a difference how far out you are. And it's all the thing about spurious accuracy. What you need is the information to manage the business without, getting hung up on whether an invoice is a penny out or not.
Well, I guess we sell ourselves, don't we, on visibility, which is what you're talking about there, is having an awareness of what's being spent and then controlling as well. And it's, I guess you've got experience in the past of when you've worked for larger organisations and the control aspect of, needs management. Have you got any good anecdotes there where people, well, we see it in the paper where, Patisserie Valerie, 10 million quid went missing, and the finance director knew nothing about it. That's the ultimate in horror stories. But the control aspects of business are so important, aren't they? As you get bigger, making sure you've got your finger on the pulse and you've got a good team behind you who's working with that.
I don't have any direct experience of stuff that went dramatically wrong like that, fortunately. But But to give you an example of spurious levels of accuracy, I did work in the education sector, and it was a university, higher education funded university. And I do remember sitting in an audit committee, annual audit committee, and our auditors were, one of the top three UK accountants. And we went through the list of exceptions, which is one of those routine, boring things you have to do. And there was one, and he said, well, there's an invoice here we found, which was for £17.32, and it wasn't included in the accounts. And I looked around the room, and there were some very senior people on our audit committee, and I said, I'll take £17.32. And the audit committee burst out laughing, and we moved on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's about knowing your audience.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's the other thing that we've talked about before. Is that a good CFO has a bigger picture, don't they? If you're obsessing about, well, relative to your turnover, if you're obsessing about £17.32, then it's either it's the sort of thing my dad would do, who's an accountant, out of pure bloody mindedness, he would want to find it, but you have to draw a line of sensibility on these things.
You do, but you do it at the right level in the organisation. So a bookkeeper, an accounts payable clerk, I would absolutely insist they would have that 32 pence right.
Yeah,
it's not their judgment call on that. That would be whether I would report that to the board or not. Different thing altogether. Horses for courses.
So if there was one thing that you could wave a magic wand at in the finance process, and I guess finance is a process. It kind of ebbs and flows. You have kind of seasonal targets like end of year stuff. You've got monthly, sort of figures to produce and things like that. What's the one thing if you could just wave a magic wand and just have that thing taken away from you? What would it be?
The biggest thing for me is being able to get all the data let's change the word there, all the information when I want it.
Yeah.
In the right place. We've got loads of data, that. We've got tons of data. What would be great would be having that in the form of information that is useful when I need it. And if you are even if you're a huge company that can afford SAP or any of the other ERP systems, and everything goes through a system like that. So theoretically, you can get any information you want when you want it. You still don't have everything that you want when you want it, because particularly in the SAP environment, you're dealing with a massive supplier that can't change very quickly.
Yeah.
So just to be able to get information when you need it, that's the holy grail. And I think the product that we sell helps with that.
Yeah.
But it's a part of the picture.
If anyone's watched any of the other videos I've done, I've spoken about the truth on more than one occasion. And when you have multiple sort of, silos of data, you can link them all together through something like Power BI, which, I'm a massive fan of. But ultimately, you want the truth, don't you? And your finance system will say, well, that's actually, it's whatever, in our case, zero says, that's the truth. But it's kind of always difficult if you're replicating data, because you can say, well, even if it's things like bugs, how many bugs are recorded? Well, 3 over what period? And it's like, oh, well, it's actually replicated data. It's slightly out now. That's so frustrating when you think, oh, it's the actual truth here. What is the actual number? And I guess as you get bigger, if you're running multiple systems, which is these days, you kind of tying them all together is quite a challenge, really.
Yes, it is. It is. And, one of the things we're trying to do at Zahara is have one version of the truth. So, one version of our annual recurring revenue, for example. And, we're not a startup anymore, but we're still a young business growing. But I worked for Asda stores, and I can talk about this because a long time ago now, but I do remember there were 3 different HR systems, and somebody landed me with the task of trying to reconcile the headcount between the 3 different HR systems. It took me 2 months, and I didn't get there. So it's not an easy win.
No, absolutely. So you've kind of moved more into the operations side of the business. I mean, you've still got the the role of finance director, but the operations side of the business has always kind of interested you. Do you think that's a common thing where, is it a kind of natural thing for somebody who's in finance to actually take an interest in the operational side of things and want to get actually controlling the business on an operational level? Or are you quite unique like that?
I wouldn't like to say I was unique, but I do. I mean, there are different ways finance can go. You might have an interest in the financing of the business. So I spent a couple of years in treasury, and that's a very interesting part of the finance function. But I mean, it's quite rarefied and it's quite divorced from the business itself. But no, I can see FDs taking more time doing that, and particularly if you're in a bigger business, because in a bigger business, how you are funded financially and what you do with your cash has a much bigger impact on the profitability of the business than it does for us. So I don't think. I don't think I could call it any way whether FDs want to go into operations or not.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think if you look at the trend, which roles tend to move into the CEO position, I'd say marketing, stroke sales, and finance would be, up there as being, which did tell you something about the interest of the incumbents of those roles in the general running of the business.
I think that's goes on cycles though, because when I worked at Canon many years ago, when I went into the role, the MD had come from finance.
Yeah.
It went through a period where they wanted the business to calm down a little bit, and then so the finance guy gets put in as the CEO. He kind of calms the business down, like, you're spending too much money, we're going to sort this out, and want somebody a bit more gung ho. So they bring somebody in from sales, and he goes a bit too mad, like Steve Ballmer at Microsoft or something like that, who's roaring, and then he's calmed down again by a finance person. So that used to be kind of like the cycle of businesses. Certainly, kind of there's some well-known stories in the 90s and the early 2000s. I'm not sure. I guess for the high-profile businesses these days, that we're talking about, the founders are still very much there. Kind of Zuckerberg at Facebook and Elon at Tesla and pretty much everywhere else. But it's fascinating. But I guess the biggest success story has got to be, I mean, Tim Cook came up to Apple as a fantastic operations person, and also the guy at Microsoft. I mean, he's done a phenomenal job, and I think he's not a salesman at all. So it's kind of, sometimes you just need that steady hand on the tiller, don't you, as the expression goes?
Yeah, I think you need an element of consistency, which I think is a steady hand on the tiller, and you need to be able to articulate a vision for the business that everybody buys into. Famously, I'll tell you an example from my past. So when I was at Planet, we had a big private equity investor, and the guy that ran it was a very famous guy in the city. And whenever he saw new businesses that he wanted him to invest in them, he famously walked them up the stairs to the boardroom, which was in the centre of London, and was a fantastic, superb room. And if they couldn't articulate how they made money from the point he met them at the door to when he ushered them into the boardroom, he would just turn them right round and walk them back down the stairs again. You've
got to get good at your elevator pitch.
You have to exactly. But you have to know how you make money. You have to know where your revenue comes from and how you turn it into profit.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you're an avid reader. You've got a big library of books behind you. Well, not only cookery books, but you've also got a lot of management books as well. What's the last book you read, and what's your kind of what book would you recommend to anyone who's building a career right now in business? In business.
Well, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think one of the things that is the most important thing to me is about teams working as teams. And there's a series of books by an American guy called Patrick Lencioni, and he's written a book called Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and that's a really good book. Really enjoyed reading that. He has a style where there's a little story. He calls it a fable, where you articulate, what's going on, and then you explain the learnings. That's a great book.
Yeah, and from good to great, that's a book that you reference on many occasions.
Yes, that too. Yeah, get the flywheel going and get it working. I think I did an MBA, as you know, and I would say 10-15% of that was really directly useful. Another 50% was interesting, but being able to distill the elements of the MBA into something that's applicable to real businesses as opposed to academic discussion can be difficult. And I think books like Good to Great and they were taught on my MBA. Five Dysfunctions of a Team wasn't, but is equally relevant.
Yeah, I did smile at having been forced to read Good to Great under our EOS kind of tutelage.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, for those who don't know, is Entrepreneur's Operating System. I'm the visionary, Jonathan's the integrator. But it was all the companies that are referenced in that Good to Great, they've long gone. And it could do with being brought up to date. I was listening to the audiobook as I was walking around, but the principles are always true with these things. It's a bit like Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. It's like 100 years old. It's still completely relevant. It's kind of, there's something in these books that you can take away.
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, I think, yes, we joked about Good to Great, and that none of them are there. Well, probably some of them might be, but
Still.
but I bet the reasons they're not there is because they fell off the wagon and started doing something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
By
tech. So I sent you some questions ahead, so that this isn't going to come as a surprise. But I know you love your rugby. But if you could have been a professional sportsman, and the essence of this could be laziness actually. If you could be a professional world-class sportsman, which one would it have been? Or what sport would you have wanted to be world-class in?
It wouldn't be rugby, because the idea of spending my working life travelling around the globe in the winter would not appeal. So, tennis or cricket.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I like playing tennis. Tennis is a great game. Cricket, I don't know much about. I just like the idea of 5 days in the Caribbean working.
I think that's an admirable answer. I was watching on TV last week, I think it was, Rafa was playing out his last games or something like that. But he's gone through with Novak Djokovic, Rafa, Roger, and Andy Murray. I mean, it just and they all strike me as being fantastic guys as well. Exemplary sportsmen, incredibly disciplined, incredibly kind of always come across well on camera and things like that. So I think tennis is quite a glamorous game these days, but every single one of those would have put the hard yards back in their youth. That's for sure.
Well, yes, personal discipline's got to be everything in any sport these days. I remember watching rugby. Take rugby, the haka. If you've ever watched a rugby game with any of the Pacific teams, they all have their hackers. If you look back at the haka done by a New Zealand team in the 70s, just amateurish. They're all looking at each other thinking, well, what do I do now? Oh, he's doing that. I'll do that then. Oh right. Oh. Now even the haka is 100% perfect.
I've got a fantastic anecdote about the haka. Many years ago, I worked in a state agency, and John Hall was my financial advisor. He sat out the back and sold the mortgages. We were out the front selling houses. And at the time, he was trying to get back into the England team, and he became captain of England A. And there was a game, I think it was somewhere down in Cornwall. It was an England 8 game down there against a touring New Zealand team. They did the haka. He was captain, and he foolishly stepped forward to kind of, confront the confrontation.
Yeah.
And he was laughing about it on like the following Monday back in the office. He stood so close, the bloke effectively spat all over him. So
Yeah,
So yeah, it's sometimes you have to respect tradition.
I think you do. Yeah, other people's as well. Yeah. Mm.
Okay, so final question then. Uh,
Mm.
this is the Marty McFly bit, right? So from Back to the Future, it had a massive impact on my life. Being about 15 or 16 at the time when that film came out. If you could go back in time, the Biff thing, and you could reinvent something, or you could invent something for the first time, knowing what it's like now, what would that be?
I would always have to go to Star Trek for the answers here, and I think if you could invent a universal translator, we almost have one now. We're getting there with AI, etc. But just being able to effortlessly understand somebody coming from a different point of view, not just different language, but a different point of view.
Yeah,
You know, one of the big things in business is often mediating between people who are coming from slightly different viewpoints and being able to work with them and help them see that actually they're not that far apart. So some sort of translator to help us get to an answer, that would be something wonderful to have invented.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not going to say anything because I hope to be having the same conversation with many other people, so I can formulate their ideas. But yeah, it's good. Well, look, it's been enjoyable talking to you on a non. Well, we're talking about business, but we haven't been talking about our business specifically and the specific issue
No,
we face. We'll be doing that tomorrow morning. Well, I hope anyone who's viewing this gets some benefit from it because Jonathan's a phenomenally experienced CFO and operations director. And from my perspective, as the kind of flighty visionary who kind of has called whiplash in the past, do this, do that. He's incredibly grounded and stable as well, and just the kind of person that I enjoy working with. So, look, thanks for joining me on the call, and I'll go off and do the edits now.
thanks for your time and your kind words, and yeah, edit away.